Hi, this is Bastiaan, and today we're going to examine the Dunst opening, or the Van Geet opening, which I played recently at club level. So I'm playing white, and the Van Geet starts out with knight to c3. And this is a natural developing move, but it's not often seen because it, among other things, blocks the c-pawn. And after d5, a move which was played, the knight becomes under attack after d4. Now it's possible for white to continue with a normal queen's pawn game and replying with d4, but that's not what we're going to see today. Instead I play e4, allowing black, or inviting black, to advance the pawn and attack my knight. And although it's possible for black to recapture with pawn takes pawn, then I can develop my knight to e4, which gets good development for the knight. Now black may gain tempo by developing the bishop to f5, after which I can play knight to g3 and again gain tempo myself by counterattacking the bishop, after which black may play bishop to g6, and I can play knight to f3. So if this is played, we get an unusual opening, but white has a small edge because he has developed his knights first, whereas black has developed the bishop first, and it's usually preferable to develop the knights before the bishops. So that's a possible opening continuation, but pawn takes pawn wasn't played. Instead, black advances the pawn with d4, attacking my knight. Now there's a bit of an opening paradox, where it is good to open the center with pawns, but it's bad to do it prematurely, because otherwise the pawns get attacked. And at this point we can see something like an Alekhine defense by white. So players familiar with the Alekhine defense will be familiar with this opening and gameplay and style of play that will follow. We have overextended black's pawn, so I can move my knight to e2. Now the pawn is currently protected by the queen, but after knight to g3 I get two attackers on the pawn on d4. So black may try and advance the pawn in order to exchange it and get rid of the weak overextended pawn, but after let's say pawn takes pawn and queen recaptures, I can play knight to c3 with free development and attack on the queen. You can see that the pawn on e4 is protected. The queen will need to retreat, and after d4 white has a winning opening with a center and a developed knight, whereas black has nothing at all. What's also possible is not to recapture the pawn, but continue development instead with knight to c3. And if pawn takes pawn, queen recaptures. And we can see that white has developed two pieces and one pawn, and will soon enough take control of the center. Black has developed nothing at all and lost a central pawn for a flanking pawn of white. So it's easy to play the wrong moves against this opening if you're not familiar with it. This wasn't played, so d3 is possible, but it's not advisable for black. Instead, black tries e5, trying to solidify the center. And now I play c3, and the concept behind this is very logical. We can see that black has wasted two moves in advancing his pawn, and only with a simple pawn move of myself we can exchange pawns. I will have lost flanking pawn against a central pawn for black. Also I've created an open diagonal for the queen, which may come in useful. So c3 was played, counterattacking the center. Black plays knight to f6, so he doesn't want to exchange because he loses center control and will have wasted too many moves. The knight move counterattacks the pawn on e4. So pawn takes pawn, and now there are two possibilities to recapture. Black may play knight takes pawn, which is not bad, after which f3 chases away the knight. And now black must be careful in retreating the knight. Knight to d6 is best, because after pawn takes pawn, black can play knight to f5, and this prevents white from playing d4 to support the pawn. So f4 is necessary to support the overextended e5 pawn first. And now the tables are turned, and it is white that has an overextended center, but a decent position for both players. Pawn takes pawn was played instead. Now again there are a few possibilities. I can play knight to g3 in order to protect the pawn on e4, after which black may play bishop to d6 in order to counterattack against the knight. So that's perhaps not best. d3 is possible to support the pawn, but knight to f3 was played instead. And the reason why is that I'm now counterattacking the pawn on d4, which has one defender, and abandoning the pawn on e4, which has one attacker. So knight takes pawn is possible, after which knight can grab the pawn on d4. This leaves white with an isolated pawn, but it leaves black with no central pawns, and white has one more piece developed. Knight to c6 was played instead, protecting the pawn on d4. So I play queen to a4, taking advantage of the open diagonal. Now of course the knight cannot protect the pawn, so knight takes pawn instead was played. So we're entering the variation we saw a move before, with the difference that the knight is developed and the queen is developed. I recapture the pawn, and now black plays bishop to d7, allowing black to attack my knight. But I attack first. Knight takes knight. Bishop recaptures. Now we always have to keep in mind that we have an isolated pawn on d2. Currently there are 3 defenders and 2 attackers, so that's okay. Bishop to b5, and this counters the threat on my queen, and there's a risk of doubling the pawns of black. Black plays queen to d5 in order to prevent that, but now bishop takes bishop check, queen recaptures, queen takes queen check, and pawn recaptures. And as we can see now, at the advantages and disadvantages on both sides, is that white's king is safe and he can castle. Black's king is not so safe. If he castles queenside, he has a poor defense with the double pawns. white has one isolated pawn, but black has doubled pawns and two isolated pawns on the C file and also on the A file. So I quickly castle. Black castles queenside, putting pressure on the pawn on D2. I play knight to E5. Now there's only one defender left on the pawn on D2 and two attackers, but I get an attack of myself on the two pawns on the C and F file. Knight takes pawn. Knight recaptures, so we're going to see trade-off. Knight takes rook. Knight takes rook. And of course now my knight has to be recaptured or black will lose a pawn. King takes knight and king takes knight. Approaching the endgame with serious pawn weaknesses for black. Bishop to D6. Bishop to E3. Now let's say if a random move is played A3, it is impossible for black to capture the pawn on H2, because if that is played I can trap the knight, trap the bishop, simply by playing G3. So bishop to E3 was played, developing and attacking the pawn on A7. A5 in order to protect that pawn. Now rook to C1, again developing with tempo, attacking the pawn on C6. King to D7 in order to protect. Bishop to D4, attacking the pawn on F7. And now it's impossible for black to keep on to his pawns, because he doesn't have the structure to do so. Now let's say if G6 is played, of course I can grab the rook, so moving the pawns is not possible. If rook to G8 is played, I can simply rook lift and attack the pawn on A5. And it's not possible for black to step up with the king, because it's locked in by his own pawns and pieces in his own structure. So rook to C4 can be played. Now what may black try? If say G6 at this point, I can continue with rook to A4, rook to A8, then bishop to C3, and we can see that the pawn is lost. Alternatively, let's say if black plays rook to A8, he loses the pawn outright on G7. So after attacking the pawn on G7, it's impossible for black to defend against it. Black simply doesn't do so and plays rook to the open file. I grab the pawn. Black attacks the bishop. Bishop to C3, attacking the pawn. A4. And rook to B1. And what I'm trying to do is very simple. I'd like to play B3, after which this pawn will either attack, I can recapture with my rook on B1, and I will be left with a passed pawn on the A file. And if I advance and black plays A3, we can see that this pawn is stuck on a black square, and I have a black squared bishop, which will result in me grabbing a free pawn. C5 was played instead. I play B3, attacking the pawn. So I have a passed pawn on the A file. Black has enough pieces to stop it. but I also will create passed pawns on the Fng file, and it will be impossible for black to defend against both of them. So rook to b8 was played, rook to b2 in order to protect my own rook, so I can grab the pawn on a4. Pawn takes, rook recaptures. I've created the passed pawn on the a file. Rook to a2, rook to b2 to protect the pawn, rook to a3 attacking the bishop, rook to c2 protecting the bishop, king to e6, bishop to d2, trying to circle around my own rook in order to free up space for the a pawn. a4 is played, bishop to c1, rook to e4, and although black has played a decent game, we can now see why he's still at club level. Rook is played to the open file, but this allows white to exchange the rooks and leave black with a lost game. Perhaps black could have held on to the draw if he played iron defense, although that's very difficult to do so. But now the rooks are exchanged, and I can advance my pawns on the a file and Fng file. So king to e2 first, bishop takes pawn, and although black's bishop is trapped now, it isn't lost, because after g3 we can see that now black has an advanced king on e4, and this changes things a bit. g3, h5, king to f1, trying to get rid of the bishop, but this creates a hole on f3. Now king to f3, and I can no longer approach the bishop. But although I can't get a free bishop or a bishop in exchange for two pawns, black's bishop is locked out of the game, and I still have a free bishop on c1. So bishop to f4 first, in order to attack the pawn on c7 and protect my pawn on g3. Black advances, a4, and now there's nothing that can stop white from promoting. If black tries to promote now, my c1 square is covered, so black first has to waste moves in order to have me get have me exchange my bishop or get rid of it. h4, so I ignore it and play a5. Pawn takes pawn, bishop recaptures, bishop recaptures, pawn recaptures, and king takes pawn. So I've exchanged our bishops at the cost of 3 pawns. So I'm down a pawn at this point, but of course now nothing can stop my promotion. a6, after which black resigns the game. So that's an example of the Dunst or the Van Giet opening, which is a bit of a creeping victory. So there are no spectacular moves or sacrifices, but after solid play, black will be left with a lousy game in a lost position. So I hope you enjoyed this. Give it a try in club play. Please leave a comment and have a great evening.